Mackenzie, let's bring you in here. So John Ray, who's an expert in these kind of reclamation projects, he testified about the lack of record keeping within FTX. Just take a listen to this.
This one is unusual, and it's unusual in the sense that literally, there's no record keeping whatsoever. It's in the absence of record keeping. Employees would communicate, invoicing and expenses on Slack, which is, essentially a way of communicating for chat rooms. They use QuickBooks, a multi-billion-dollar company using QuickBooks.
QuickBooks?
QuickBooks. Nothing against QuickBooks, very nice tool, just not for a multi-billion-dollar company. There's no independent board, right? We had one person really controlling this. No independent board. That's highly unusual.
QuickBooks. Just, walk us through the highlights of this hearing, Mackenzie. I mean, how will the poor record keeping at FTX make it harder, though, for them to piece together exactly what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that he said anything that was all that surprising. From day one, with that first day filing that we saw, he just really laid into the existing structure, the complete lack of record keeping, the complete lack of concern for any sort of proper due diligence. And I think that it really goes to the point that kind of the first hurdle here is the fact that prosecutors have to get Bankman-Fried stateside. So before we can even think about how they're going to prosecute this case, or make sense of the books, you have to land the subject. And you have this, 1991 extradition treaty between the U.S. and the Bahamas that does clearly spell out that order for extradition to be justified. But SBF has the ability to appeal that. So this is a process that could potentially take months, if not longer. And I think that that's really, when I've been speaking to legal experts, they say that's the first thing to clear here.
All right, Danny, let's talk about the legal part of all of this, specifically count 8. That's where he's being charged with campaign finance violations. And take a listen to what he told Chuck on Meet the Press Reports just a few months ago about his donations.
Well, you think every money you spend in politics should be disclosed publicly? Are you comfortable with that?
I think that I think what I would say is, if there was a norm where every dollar that everyone donated in politics was to be disclosed publicly, I would have a lot of sympathy for that. I think I might support it. I haven't thought carefully about it enough to know. But
well, it sounds like what you're saying is maybe there's some donations that you have made that you wouldn't make if you knew they were going to be immediately public.
So I think I don't generally think about it that way. I generally think of it as like these are the right the right contributions to make.
So break down what this campaign finance charge is and how it's different from what SBF has been saying publicly.
I can't possibly break down what SBF said to Chuck Todd in that last bit of sound there. But the indictment is rather simple, and I think that's part of the government strategy here, including the campaign finance law violation. I mean, it pretty simply boiled down alleges that he donated knowingly too much in violation of campaign finance laws. And actually, when you look at the entire indictment, I can already imagine the government's opening statement to the jury at trial, and it's going to be, you don't need to understand crypto to understand this case. Crypto is a side issue, so you can breathe a sigh of relief for all of us out there that don't fully understand it. This is straight up a fraud case. This is a straight up campaign finance law violation case. Crypto is a side issue. The fraud, building on what Tom Winters said, is as old as crime itself. It's as basic as it gets. Money coming in one place. People entrusted him with the money. They thought it was going to one place. It went somewhere else. Similar with the campaign finance law violations, those donations were made in violation of campaign finance laws. And that sound that you just heard from Chuck Todd might be one more piece of evidence the government uses to show that whatever he was rambling about, it evidenced that he knew that campaign finance laws existed.
So, Mackenzie, to Danny's point that this really doesn't have that much to do with crypto, obviously it's got to make investors nervous, though, right? What does the future of crypto look like?
I think that trust is permanently eroded among some people. A lot of folks placed blind trust in FTX, the cryptocurrency exchange, but also in Sam Bankman-Fried. He was this emblem of the industry and really this bastion of trust. Like 6 months ago, when the entire industry began to fold, you saw bankruptcy after bankruptcy. It was Sam Bankman-Fried who really came to the rescue and reassured people of the longevity of the digital asset space. And when he found out that the operation that he was running under the hood was essentially functioning like a fraud, a lot of people, their confidence was irrevocably lost in crypto assets. And so I think that, for one thing, people are going to think twice, especially those retail consumers who were parking, in some cases, their life savings on these platforms, thinking of it as a bank, not as a risky investment. I think people will think twice there. And regulators are coming in. I mean, even today you've got the House holding a hearing, tomorrow the Senate. We're going to see regulation become a much bigger part of that dialogue, and that might put some people off from wanting to get that exposure to cryptocurrencies. And
then, Danny, quickly, why would prosecutors decide to charge him right now as opposed to letting him give his testimony in front of Congress, which would have been under oath?
Prosecutors may have decided that they have enough information and that they've collected enough in terms of his public statements. Strategically, we may never know why they chose to pull the trigger now as opposed to letting him talk a little more. But more than likely, they may have even had concerns about where he was in the Bahamas. Yes, there is an extradition treaty, but extradition treaties and extradition itself doesn't always run as smoothly as folks would hope. And in this case, even though it's pretty clear under the wording of the extradition treaty that he comes back, he should be surrendered. As we know, you can appeal that, you can delay that. Maybe the government figured it was better now than later.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.